Hey, friends. Thank you so much for taking time to listen to my first ever podcast. I am so excited and so honored that you took time out of your day just to listen to me chat. I can't even explain to you guys how long this has been in the works. This was an idea that God gave me last November. And literally all he gave me was the words, God bless my brand. I had no clue what it would evolve into, and I still am trying to figure it out day by day. But we had our first event in February, and it was for entrepreneurs, for career bosses, for side hustlers, really just anyone who was ready to allow God to speak into the next phase of their careers. So we talked about things like what are the best practices on social media? What are your passions? How do you navigate these different spaces? And then God said, "Well, that's not the end of it. Let's talk." And for me, this podcast was something that I put on hold for quite some time. If I'm honest, COVID-19 has definitely shook all of us hard. And so before we go any further, I just want you to grab whatever beverage is nearest to you, whether it's your glass of wine, because I'm want to be sommelier, or it's tea, or it's water, or it's lemonade, whatever it is. And I want you to just use this time to take some time for you. I think in this state, we're fighting so many different battles. We're fighting police brutality. We're fighting COVID-19, the pandemic. We're fighting racism. We're fighting sexual assault. We're fighting unemployment. We're fighting so many different fights. And for the last couple of months, a lot of us have not really been able to take time for ourselves because we've been fighting. And every day it feels like a new fight. And so I want you to use these 15 to 20 minutes just to relax, to allow yourself to breathe, to allow yourself to be inspired. I promise I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm not trying to ask you to be my client. I just pray that you hear from God. That whatever comes of this podcast, that you take a second to just be in the moment. So without further ado, I promise I'm going to get to our topic today, which is what is your why? And I know for a lot of people, you've probably already heard this spiel before. It feels like, okay, she's just going to tell me to write down my passions. But I promise that's not what this is. This is about you taking a step back and understand what is it that you're doing any of this for. So I'll give you an example. So when I moved to Chicago, I quickly realized that I needed to probably make some friends. And a lot of friendship or dating is really about you getting to know a person and not just understanding what they're like, or do they like flowers, or do they like, chocolates. It's not all about that, but it's really about what are they doing it for? Because I think people's love language and how they interact is really a reflection of what their why is and what their purpose is. So one of the things I always ask, whether I'm meeting friends or I'm, going on a date, is like, what are your likes? And a lot of times, what I've learned, even through my own therapy journey, is that our brains are so quick to tell us what we don't like. So someone might say, if I say, like, okay, what do you like? Someone might instantly say, well, I really don't like someone who's not loyal. I really don't like this. I really don't like that. And they still haven't told me what they like. So we might have a list of 10 things on that dislike, but we only have 4 things on our like list because we're not able to reproduce those thoughts of things in our mind that bring us happiness, that bring us joy, that wake us up in the morning, that get us excited. We're only able to replicate the pain and say we don't want these experiences anymore. And so my hope for today's podcast is that we really dive into that and think about what it is that you like. So, with that being said, I want to demystify one thing. The title of this podcast is God Bless My Brand. It's not God Bless My Business. It's not God Bless My Funding. It's not God Bless My fund. It's God Bless My Brand. And your brand is not determined by whether you own a business or not. It's not determined by whether you're an investor or you hold a bunch of stocks. That's not what this is. You are your brand. So this podcast, we're going to talk about, of course, business strategies. But we're also going to talk about mental health. We're also going to talk about relationships. We're going to talk about your spiritual and emotional well-being because you are your brand. That's all encompassing. So when I talk about your why and when I ask you, what are your likes? I don't want you to just think about your likes in business. I want you to think about your likes overall. Why? Because it's going to be reflective when someone brings your name up and says, hey, do you know so-and-so? Or, hey, yeah, I just heard about them. Like, do you, that's what's going to come up. It's not just going to be about all of your accomplishments. It's going to be about who you are as a person. So I want to tell you a little quick story about some of my closest friends, and I hope this rings true for you. So, for example, one of my closest friends, her name is Kendall. And Kendall is an amazing human. She's an engineer by trade, then went on to sales, now is in customer success. But her why is not any of those things. Her why is empowering women of color to be their best selves and show up that way. So she has a nonprofit called the Diamond Campaign. And everything you do, even if you watch her tweets, her love for music is all about empowering women. And so that's what gets her up in the morning. I have another friend named Leslie. She's amazing. The way her mind works is crazy to me. She went to Duke, but now is very passionate about seeing our communities thrive financially. And she's not just thinking, okay, how can you cut down on your budget? But how can you make the things that you love doing, how can you incorporate them to live a fulfilling life? So she's a financial coach. I have another friend named Chadley who's currently in law school doing her thing, okay? Shorty's killing it. But when you talk to her, a lot of the things you'll pick up is that she's very passionate about equity in healthcare, making sure that women and men of color have access to healthcare and great healthcare, so that women are not dying on the table when they're giving birth. And I have one last friend I want to chat with you about. Her name is Aaliyah. She's amazing. She's a consultant, but when you talk to her, she also is passionate about healthcare, but she's also really passionate about real estate. My goal was always, I want a single family home and then I want to grow from there. Her goal was the reverse. She wanted to buy multiple properties so that she can get low to mid income persons in there so that they could really have a great space to live in that they can make their own. The reason I bring up my friends is because I think their whys are really important. But their whys didn't just start when they got to college. Some of their whys have evolved. Some of them have multiple whys and they tie into each other. So again, I'm going to ask you, what is your why? And why is it your why? If you've ever been to therapy, you probably have had a therapist question, well, why is that? And a lot of times, once we get to that third or fourth layer of why, we get pretty frustrated because it's like, why do you keep asking me these things? I told you, Bob. But the reason that they're asking us these whys is because a lot of times, once we ask a couple layers of question, we get to the true intent of our heart. We get to the true intent of why we feel that way. What is that causing for us? What is that bringing out of us? So for so many of us, we want to start, and I'm just going to take it back to business. So many of us have looked around Twitter and there's so many things going on, from IML Trade House to all these courses to people telling you to start an LLC or small business grants. And a lot of us feel a lot of pressure because we know we want to make more money. We know we want to build a better life for ourselves, our families, our loved ones, but we're not sure really how to do it. And there's so much pressure to just do something that we don't always take the time to figure out what that something is. A lot of us have said, okay, I'm gonna start a t-shirt line because it seems like it's profitable. But we have no idea what we want to put on those t-shirts. But before we do anything, we go and find a designer, we go and find a printer. But again, we have no idea why we're doing that t-shirt company. So if we're interviewed, our sound may sound jumbled because we really have no clue why we did that. We just wanted to monetize. And I want to be clear, there is nothing at all wrong with monetizing. But if you don't know your why, when the business get tough, just as it did in COVID-19, when people start losing their jobs, when people start losing a lot of the things that they took for granted or worked really hard on, it's tough to stay in. It's really, really tough. But if you took a step back and said, even for me, I have known since I was probably 14 or 15 that my why was encouraging and empowering God's people. And it's looked different in every season of my life. When I was 14, 15, 16, I really thought I needed to be a preacher to do that. I thought that I needed to be behind a pulpit. I needed to be that person because that's what I thought that looked like. And in that season, it worked. God was good. I was able to do, some Bible studies and things like that. And it was great. But then when I got to college, I realized, hey, maybe I don't want that. And I felt like I was a failure because my why didn't change, but the capacity in which I did it did. So when got to college, it felt like I needed to do more mentoring programs and I needed to do more volunteering opportunities. I needed to do conferences. And again, that worked well in that season. And then once I got out of college, when I moved to Chicago, I felt again like a failure because I'm like, now I don't know anyone. I don't know who I'm supposed to empower. I don't even know where my life is going. And I almost felt mad at God because I'm like, God, you've done all these amazing things for me in the past. I've done conferences, I've been speaking, I've been doing all these things. And now I don't even know what the heck I'm supposed to be doing right now. And I felt like, again, I had lost my why. Not because I wanted to, but because I felt like that was it for me. And I could tell you a bunch of things that I disliked in those seasons. I could tell you, hey, I disliked how I was treated. I disliked the hardship I felt. I disliked the pressure I felt to be perfect. But I could not tell you what I liked. I could not tell you, hey, I really like when I see people's faces light up. I really like when someone tells me the impact that I've made. I really like when I feel like I've accomplished something in someone's life. But I couldn't tell you that then. So the reason I'm having the first episode of this podcast be what is your why? Because I don't want you to go through the same traps I've been through. And even if you have been in those traps, I want something different for you now. That's why I asked you at the beginning to take a step back, to breathe, because I think so many of us have that block up that we can't see our likes. We can't see how the many phases and the mistakes and the mess ups and the heartbreaks and all of that play a part into our why. We can only see the hurt. We can only see what we don't want to do anymore. And not how all of that has been interweaved into this next segment of my life. One of the things I mentioned is the capacity to do it. And for so many of us, we're searching. We're searching for our next. We're searching for that next business venture. We're searching for that next role, the next opportunity, that next relationship. So what's your capacity? I want $1 million, but am I in the space to make it? Have I done my own work? Have I built the foundation, which may by design take a couple months? I think so many of us are in a rush to make it that we don't know what making it means. It's easier to start a social media page on Instagram than it is to do the work. And I don't mean the work of telling everybody and getting people excited and getting followers. I mean the work of your why. Why do you want to start that venture? What is it going to do for you? What is it accomplishing for you? What is it accomplishing for your target market? What is it accomplishing? Why do you want that job? Is it because you want to learn XYZ skills? Is it because it looks good on your resume? What is that why? The reason I ask what is the why is because when you're able to understand what your why is, it is that much easier to communicate it. Whether you're in a boardroom, you're pitching your next product, you're looking for your next role. Heck, if you're just on a date, okay? What is that why for you? And a lot of that work starts internally. It starts with what are you good at? I know people are going to roll their eyes at this, but like, what would you do if you didn't get paid? The whole reason I started Resourceful Reese way before I started charging people was because I saw that it was a struggle for myself and for my friends and for the people I went to school with to start their resume. It's hard for people to talk about their accomplishments, especially if you're not keeping a list. I saw that it was hard for us to think about how do you prepare for an interview? How do you showcase the skills that you have while also having a hunger to learn more? How do you communicate that? So yes, I charge people, and yes, now like people are always like, your prices are a little low, but my goal was never to make a bunch of money. My goal was to help people. My goal was to get people into the jobs and the careers that they really wanted, their dream job. Even my goal for this podcast, it would be wonderful if all of y'all became clients and did coaching sessions. But my goal of this podcast, my why behind it is, again, to encourage and empower God's people. And God's people, by the way, means all people. That means Black, white, Asian, Hispanic, a part of the LGBTQ plus community, women, men, children, all of them, all of God's people, everybody. So it doesn't matter where you are. It doesn't matter where you've been. I just want you to know your why now. And it may not happen today. It may not happen this year. But I want you to take some time after this podcast to really just make a list of what you like. And then from there, think about, okay, if I ask 3 people today, what are the things that I'm good at? What are the things that you would come to me for? What are the things that you would come to me for advice around? And then that's your brand. And I want you to ask a couple different people, not just friends, not just family, but maybe people you work with, people you've interacted with before, even people you haven't known that long. Because I think once you do that, you'll start to understand your why. You'll start to understand what your brand is, and then you can change it. If you don't want that to be your brand, let's go ahead and change it. And on the subsequent podcast, we're going to talk about that. We're going to have guests. We're going to have a lot of different people come in and share their experiences, share their thoughts. Again, to provide a safe space where you can learn, where you can brainstorm, where you can think, where you can grow. Again, I just want to say thank you for listening, and God bless my brand. And I hope that you join us next week. Have a good one.